I'm Timothy Large. I'm the head of independent media programs at the International Press Institute in Vienna. And IPI heads the consortium, which is made up of 4 organizations that manage the IJ4EU fund. And we're happy to have representatives from all of the partners here. Let me first of all introduce you to my colleague Milica, who works very closely with me on the IJ4EU program here. And I should just mention that in addition to leading the consortium, IPI is also in charge of one of the grant schemes, the investigation support scheme, and we'll be telling you about that in just a minute. We also have Zlatina from the European Journalism Center, and they are in charge, and Zlatina in particular is in charge of the freelancer support scheme, which she will tell you about in just a minute. And then we have Denise from the European Center for Press and Media Freedom, another longtime partner in the consortium. And ECPMF handles things such as the legal support part of IJ4EU, the awards that we have every year, an annual conference, and so on, and other bits of support as well. So she will give you a very brief update on that. We do want to keep most of this focused on the grant schemes, because I'm imagining that's why most of you are here today. So let me give you a quick overview, and then we'll get to your questions as soon as possible. Please do feel free to chat any questions or comments in the chat function there, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. And you can even start chatting and start putting them in now if you've got a question you'd like to ask. So let me just zoom out for a second and give you the big picture before we get to the nitty-gritty detail. You may well know, if you're at all familiar with the IJ4EU program, that this is about backing cross-border investigative journalism in Europe, independent watchdog journalism. We see that as a public good, and we believe that collaboration is a powerful tool to tackle stories, these big stories that go across borders, transnational significance. And our mission is to support that kind of collaboration and create a stronger, more resilient news ecosystem. And this is really important at a time when, I don't have to tell you, independent journalism is under increasing pressure. And I mean, before the call started, we were just discussing, the events of this week, the election of Donald Trump and the inauguration. And I think we're in for especially rocky times in this space. And anything that can support watchdog journalism as a public good has never been needed more, I would say. Very fabric of democracy may be at stake. So this is really important work that you're doing. And we hope that IJ4EU can help you do what would otherwise be, if not impossible, at least very difficult, because this kind of work, this kind of cross-border investigation, it demands time, teamwork, courage, and of course, it takes a lot of money. And we're going to talk mainly about the money now. I should just mention that IJ4EU is in its 5th edition. So it started in 2018 as a pilot project, and we've had editions spanning the years since. By the end of the current edition, this edition runs until the end of November 2025. By the end of this edition, so in other words, by the time we've completed the current call, IJ4EU will have distributed something like 5.75 million euros in grants over the lifetime of the program, along with other things, practical support, editorial support, legal support, and so on. And this has allowed hundreds of journalists and hundreds of newsrooms all across Europe and beyond, actually, to conduct groundbreaking projects that have had, big impact. So here we are. We're in our 3rd and final call of the current edition. I just want to reiterate that. This is the last chance in 2025 to apply for IJ4EU funding. So if you're at all on the fence about whether you think this is the time to apply, I can tell you it is the time, because there won't be another one this year. All right, so it's time to go for broke. If you've applied in the past before, you're welcome to reapply with the same application as well. Maybe we tweaked a little bit. We have in total this edition, we have 2 million euros in grants to distribute. For the next round, the current round, we have something, I forget the exact figure, but it's something in the order of about 500,000 for the investigation support scheme, and Zlatini will tell you what it is for the freelancer support scheme. But it's, we have several 100,000, certainly, the better part of a million still to go. Okay, so let's talk about the specifics of this money. You might want to know where the money comes from. 90% comes from the European Commission. This is taxpayer money. This is public money, and it flows through the European Commission's Creative Europe program. And the other 10% we have to fundraise ourselves from philanthropic partners. And the backers of the program include organizations like the Fritt Ord Foundation in Norway, Isocrates Foundation in Switzerland. We also have funding from the city of Leipzig, and we're very grateful to our co-funders. And a crucial point that I always make at this point, it's really crucial, is that this money, whether it's taxpayer or philanthropic, comes with absolutely no strings attached. Okay? Editorial independence is baked into this program. It's absolutely paramount. And we have well-established processes, I would say, to channel this public and philanthropic money into investigative journalism with zero editorial interference. So nobody's going to tell you how to report, what to report on, anything like that. There's a clear firewall between the donors and the grantees, you, and there's also a firewall between us, the implementing partners, the intermediary function, as it were, and you, the grantees. And all projects are chosen by independent juries, which is another layer of firewall. So this ensures that you can work freely while receiving this financial as well as legal and other practical support. And it's a really powerful model, I think. Okay, let me just tell you a bit about the investigations support scheme and then hand over to Zlatina. So the investigation support scheme, which IPI runs, is the larger of the two. We had 1.5 million for the course of this edition, so about a third of that is available now, 500,000. Now, I'm going to talk about eligibility, and what I say here about the investigation support scheme applies equally to the freelancer support scheme, okay? So the eligibility rules are exactly the same. So first, let's talk about geographical eligibility. Melitza, if you wouldn't mind putting the slides up. Melitza has very kindly created a number of visualizations to help explain what can be slightly complicated in terms of geographical eligibility. So here's one way to visualize this, and then we'll give you a couple more just to drive it home. The rules of this program are such that, okay, first of all, you have to be doing cross-border journalism, which means that you need to be working, you need to be teaming up or collaborating with either news organizations or individual journalists or any combination of those across at least two borders, at least one border. So you need to have members of your team based in at least two countries. And those two countries have some rules around them. So the first thing to say is that one of them has to be, no, am I right in saying? No, sorry, no, they have to be two countries from this list. They don't have to be, Zlatina, am I going crazy? We no longer have the rule of one has to be in the EU, or do we?
No, we
gone.
just had a discussion, so it's no
Yeah.
longer the privileged club only.
Okay, thank goodness for that. So it changes all the time, so sometimes even we get confused about the rules. So all you have to do is be from any two of these eligible countries. And these countries are basically countries that have signed up to the so-called cross-sectoral strand of the European Union's Creative Europe program. Now, the easy way to remember that is that's every single EU country. It's three of these EFTA countries, so Iceland, Norway, and Liechtenstein. We've had stories from Norway. I don't think we've ever had an application from Iceland yet, or from Liechtenstein. So if you're from either of those places, you are more than welcome. We also accept applications from journalists and media houses based in 7 candidate countries. Now, you'll note that Turkey and Georgia, so Georgia is on there, but Turkey is not on there. And that, again, is the rules of who's signed up to this Creative Europe program. So if you're from any of those countries, and if you are collaborating with at least one other journalist or media organization in any of those countries, then you are eligible. Okay, so it's It's not that complicated, but it is, and it changes all the time. The next edition will no doubt be slightly different again. It has to do with the rules of EU funding. Here's another way to visualize it. So those are all the countries that are eligible. And as I said, there's all 27 EU member states plus some of those other countries. Britain is not eligible. Switzerland's not eligible. Moldova, that's the other one. That's the other candidate country that's not eligible, unfortunately. And poor old Kosovo there, also not eligible, unless, of course, you are part of a team that does satisfy those criteria. So it's worth saying you can be from anywhere in the world. You can be from the UK, you can be from Turkey, you can be from Kosovo, you can be from Brazil, you can be from Myanmar, you can be from Mongolia, as long as you are part of a team that satisfies that core criteria. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Thanks for those visuals, Melitza. Was there one more, or was that the four? I think people have probably got the point anyway.
No, that's it. Just phrased in different ways.
Okay, great. So that's brilliant. So thank you very much. Okay, well, that's it. I think I covered that you can be from other places in the world. The other thing to say is that a common question we get is whether it's okay to investigate an issue or a story with ramifications outside the EU. So could you be EU-based, but do a story focusing on Sudan or somewhere else, Peru, wherever? And the answer is a very clear yes, you can, provided the investigation has a direct relevance to EU audiences. And we've had a lot of stories from all over the world, Russia, Indonesia, Mali, Brazil, all kinds of places, but there has to be a link. So the stories have to resonate with EU audiences. Now, for the investigation support scheme, the grants range in size from 5,000 euros right up to 50,000 euros. And that's pretty high for project grants. I think it's pretty unique in that sense. Another thing that's unique about this money is that you can use it for just about anything. All kinds of costs, almost, are covered. So you can pay staff salaries, even if we're talking staff salaries in a news outlet. You could have salaries paid if you're a freelancer, of course. You can use it for all the usual things like travel, translation, all that kind of stuff. But you can also use it for overheads, for paying the electricity, for communications costs, all that kind of stuff. This is very unrestricted project funding. In fact, the only restriction, I think, is that you can't buy hardware. You couldn't buy a laptop, for example. We do have a template for budgets that we ask you to use, or something like it. People find it useful. So you'll see the kind of budget lines that are in there. As for publication requirements, you must publish or broadcast in at least 2 countries. Again, it goes back to this cross-border thing. And those 2 countries, you won't be surprised to hear, have to be on that list of eligible countries. And of course, you're welcome to publish further afield as well, but that is the core publication requirement. And we've seen a lot of stories published in Japan, Korea, all over the place, but there is that core thing. So in terms of how to apply, we have a secure platform. It's called Good Grants, and we chose it because it is extremely secure. And I want to assure you, because I know that a lot of investigations contain sensitive ideas, sensitive information, sensitive details about the people involved. We know that we live in a dangerous world of hacking and surveillance and all that kind of stuff. So this is a very secure platform, the most secure platform that we could find for this purpose. And nothing leaves this platform, no data. So it's not like you put in an application and then we go and print out a PDF and email it around to jury members, and nothing like that. Everything's done on this secure platform, including the review of the applications, including the decisions made by the jury members and so on. We take your privacy and security very seriously. So I would recommend that you, if you haven't done it already, log into the platform, set up an account, and assign a team leader, as it were, a kind of lead proposal person. And that will allow you you can then go through the form and see all the things you have to fill out. You can even download a blank form in the form of a PDF. You'll see it's not very long. It's fairly short and to the point. We're not looking for huge essays here, but it does require some thought. It's a difficult and slightly well, not difficult. It's a challenging thing to put together a strong application that gets funding in such a competitive area. You'll see if you look at this form, we need certain things. We need application plans, a budget, a risk assessment, letters of intent from publishers go a long way to strengthening your applications. These are not binding, of course, but they just signal. There's a letter from an editor that said, yeah, we'd be interested in publishing this if you manage to do it. That'll help you a lot. Now, if you want more tips on this kind of thing, as well as how to really refine and strengthen your stories and your ideas, we will be holding, with our partners Arena for Journalism Europe, will be holding a so-called cross-border masterclass on February the 11th. And I highly recommend that you sign up for that. It's free. It's 2.5 hours. And Arena can help you with a lot of things in terms of just getting your application stronger. And they also offer a wonderful so-called matchmaking service, which is a kind of dating service for people looking for, not dates, they're not looking for love, they're looking for partners, journalistic partners in other countries. So if you've got a great idea for a story and you're based wherever, and you think, I really need to work with somebody in Germany or in, Georgia, wherever, Arena, through this matchmaking service, can try to hook you up with people who might be interested. Maybe we'll hear more about that in a minute. Okay, so that's pretty much it from me. The deadline is March 10th at just before midnight. Independent juries will select your projects. They'll do all that review. I'm happy to go more into the selection process a little later if you like, but I think that's probably enough for now. Let's get to the freelancer support scheme and then a very brief mention of some of the other support on offer, and then we'll get right into your questions. So thank you. I hope that was a helpful introduction. So Zlatina, over to you.
Thank you, Tim. Hello, everyone. It's really great to be here and to see so many people that are interested in IJ4EU. My name is Latina, and I'm responsible for the grants program at the European Journalism Center. We're a Dutch-based nonprofit organization that supports and develops journalism and media across Europe. And the European Journalism Center has been part of the IJ4EU program and the IJ4EU consortium since 2020. And we are responsible for and manage the freelancer support schemes since 2021, when we first introduced it as a separate grant scheme within the program. Since then, I just did some calculations earlier today. Since then, the freelancer support scheme has supported almost 60 investigations, and we have allocated almost 1 million euros in grants. And as Tim already mentioned, this is a very crucial point this time, because this is the last available call for funding under the current edition of the program. Just for your information, the available budget, the total budget for the freelancer support scheme was 500,000 euros, but a significant amount has already been allocated in the first 2 rounds. So for this currently open call, there is still slightly more than 150,000 euros up for grabs. So have this in mind and prepare your applications. The easy thing for me always, because I have the privilege of going after Tim, is that he has already covered all the key areas. So when it comes to eligibility, editorial independence, selection criteria, publication requirements, application procedure, I have to simply say that they're all completely the same as Tim described for the investigation support scheme. So again, the freelancer support scheme is all about supporting cross-border collaborative investigations in at least 2 of the eligible countries that we saw different representations of. This is all that is valid for both grants of the IJ4EU program, but what is different, I think this is what is important to address. As the name suggests, the freelancer support scheme is the dedicated space for freelance teams. So first and most importantly, this scheme supports collaborations among freelancers, or as we phrase it, teams composed predominantly of freelancers, which means that staff, part-time staff journalists can also be part of the applying teams, but also and only if they work in an individual capacity. The rule of thumb is that the freelancer support scheme is for all projects and investigations that do not have the support of a news outlet, and they are all carried out by individuals. This is the first difference or the distinctive feature of the freelancer support scheme. The second crucial element is the budget. The maximum budget available for projects under the freelancer support scheme is capped at 20,000 euros. And it is because there are additional elements of support, non-financial support that we provide to our grantees, which is the third notable element of the grant. And it is that investigations supported by the freelancer support scheme are also, they also receive additional tailored support in the form of mentorship, training, and networking opportunities in the period of implementation. So if I can sum up like the distinctive features, this is the freelancer only space within IJ4EU, which we really thought was important to have, not only because we have tried to tailor the assistance and to customize the support that we provide to grantees, but also because we kind of wanted the freelance teams to compete among themselves and not compete with newsrooms and that have different setup and resources and timelines, etc. Second, the budget is capped at 20,000 euros. And third, there is mentorship and training support that is available to all the grantees. How does mentorship work? Basically, after the projects are selected and awarded, the IJ4EU consortium, we, in consultation with the awarded teams, we agree on the type of support and expertise and skill set that the teams might benefit from. And we look for a particular expert, a mentor, we match them to the team, and then the team and their mentor decide on how to continue their collaboration over the course of the project. One important thing that I would like to mention is that budgets always matter. If you are a freelance team, but your estimated budget is above 20,000 euros, then you're more than welcome to apply to the investigation support scheme. So just my appeal is always to read carefully the criteria, the conditions of the grant, and to really see which one of the two schemes fits your needs and your project better. Other than that, application process, as I already mentioned, is the same as for the investigation support scheme. It is via Good Grants. The application form can be downloaded in advance so that you get familiarized with it. We have also included some questions around expectations, around mentorship and training, so that we can prepare as the teams are selected. The deadline for applications, again, identical to the other grant, is the 10th of March, just before midnight. And just as the case is for the investigation support scheme, the projects are evaluated and selected by an external independent jury, which is a separate one from the one for the investigation support scheme. I think these are the basics. I think that I'm not missing anything crucial, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And please ask us questions. If not now, if you think of something later, send us your questions by email so that we can help you in the process of preparing your application. Thank you.
Thank you, Zlatina. Denise, over to you.
Thanks, Tim. I will be very brief. Everybody, hi, welcome. It's lovely to see you here. I am Denise from the European Center for Press and Media Freedom, and I work as the IJ4EU Program and Events Manager there. I'll talk about three things very briefly today. So as ECPMF, our contribution to the IJ4EU is to organize the Uncovered Conference, which is the annual conference of IJ4EU. And this is an opportunity for the IG4EU grantees to showcase their works, exchange some knowledge and know-how with each other, and to basically network with each other and hopefully build the roots of their further collaborations for more cross-border projects. I highlighted the IG4EU grantees because they will be receiving a travel grant to attend Uncovered conference, but others are very welcome to join as participants at the conference, of course. Once you get your grants, hopefully you will hear a lot more about Uncovered, so I will not dwell on it much. The second thing that I want to mention is the Impact Award. So this is our annual award for cross-border investigative projects. We give 3 awards to which a €5,000 cash prize is attached. So the application criteria for this, especially for the geographical criteria, is pretty much the same with the investigative and freelancer support scheme, so you can use exactly the same map. There will be a call for nominations in February for investigations that you might have published last year in 2024. So if you already have some existing cross-border publications that matches the eligibility criteria mentioned before by Tim and Zlatina, feel free to nominate your projects. And perhaps we will see you at the award ceremony at Uncovered during autumn 2025. And please note that to be eligible for the IG4EU Impact Award, your project does not need to have been supported by IG4EU. So any project can join as long as they fulfill the geographical eligibility criteria. And the very last thing that I want to mention is the legal contingency fund. So any project that receives either the investigative or the freelancer support scheme grant is eligible to an additional legal contingency fund. So let's say you have published something and you are facing some legal challenges, you can always reach out to IPI or IJC to mention your troubles, and then ECPMF will intervene and evaluate if you are eligible for additional financial support for your legal troubles. Once you become IG4EU grantees, you will get more detailed information about it. I know you are more interested in your application processes right now, so I will leave the floor to Tim and to your questions.
Great. Well, thank you. I hope that gives you a good overview. And thank you all many of you for putting questions into the chat. And thank you to Milica and others for doing such a great job of answering those questions in the chat. I think maybe it's worth, given that some people might watch this online later and won't see that text, it might be worth just going over them and maybe elaborating a little bit on some of them, maybe not all of them, and then please feel free to ask more questions while we do this. So just really quickly scanning the ones that you've got there in the chat. One question is just clarifying this thing about whether stories need to be linked to the EU, but not specifically to the countries that you yourself are based in. And as Zlatina rightly replies, that is correct. The stories need to be of European relevance, but they don't have to be linked to where you or the team are, okay? And of course, you can see the full rules on the website. If you go to the grants section of the website, everything's explained, I think, pretty clearly. That's also true for your obligations when it comes to publication. There's a question about that. And Milica's put a link there to the publication requirements. Just to remind you what that is, again, it's got to be cross-border publication in at least 2 of those eligible countries. And it can be published in any format. It can be broadcast, it can be TV, it can be documentary, it can be podcast, it can be online, text, it can be printed magazine, any type of, as long as it's a reputable journalism, it's not some kind of crazy, I don't know what it would be, but it's got to be some sort of a reputable journalistic outlet of some kind. I hope that's clear. Just to reiterate the point, this matchmaking assistance thing, if you do need matchmaking assistance, the email for that is matchmaking, all one word, matchmaking at journalismarena.eu. Okay, matchmaking at journalismarena.eu. Can a news outlet in Africa, say, partner with journalists based in the eligible countries to apply for the grant? Very simple answer, yes, indeed. Absolutely. As long as you're part of that eligible team, then you can. Oh, in fact, I see what you're saying. So if the news outlet is based in Africa, but it has team members or has journalists based in those eligible countries, so that work? Yes, absolutely. That's fine. Okay, now, Mirella, thank you very much for your question about this, saying this is the second time you'd be applying. And in the past, you've received some comments as to the effect, something like you need to make the investigation bit of this a bit stronger, give a heightened focus on the investigation. Could you please give us some more information as to what kind of investigation-related information is necessary to provide? Do we have to attach documents supporting our claims and so on? This is a really good question, and I hope the answer is hard to answer because it's all very specific to your application, of course. But we do get quite a lot of applications that when the jury are talking about them, they say, this is a great idea, but we're not really seeing the investigative edge. It feels like this could be more like a feature story or a research piece, some sort of social studies project. We're not seeing the hard-nosed investigative edge that will make this story uncover something truly new and newsworthy. So the way to give it that edge is to play up the investigative elements. So it might be that yours is a data-driven project. So you're going to want to talk a lot about how you're going to dive into the data, what sort of data sets you're going to need, that kind of thing, and really explain how the investigation will be driven by data. Another example, it might be you might rely on freedom of information requests and that kind of thing. So play up that. Be as specific and as concrete as you possibly can. And that will reassure the jury that you've got a really good investigation, rather than just you're going to do a story on such and such a topic. I think that's the kind of thing that they're often getting at. If you can attach supporting documents or attach links, you can. It's more important just to make a strong case for how you're going to carry this off. And they want to be reassured that it's feasible. Okay, you're going to be able to actually do an investigation. This is an investigation, not just some sort of superficial feature or something like that. Not that features are necessarily superficial. So I hope that helps. Now, we received a refusal in the previous call with no additional elements and an invitation to reapply. Will it be possible to receive feedback? And as Zlatina says, yes, it is possible to receive feedback. We can't always be so detailed in explaining why the jury hasn't done it, because the decisions are very complicated and there are many, many applications, and sometimes it's just very good applications don't get funded. It's just unfortunate. But we do our best to give as much useful, constructive feedback as we can. So you're very welcome to ask for it. Zlatina's given her email there. We'll give our emails as well at IPI. So yes, indeed. Is co-financing from other organizations or other funds, for example, possible or necessary? And as Milica wrote, yes, it's possible, and it's even desirable. It's not, it's encouraged. You don't have to do it, but plenty of investigations are funded, for example, by IJ4EU and journalismfund.eu, which is another scheme you may know about. So that's absolutely fine. How many applications do we typically get for each scheme? It's a little depressing to tell you the numbers because we don't want you to be overwhelmed by the competitiveness of this. It can feel like your chances are quite small when you see the numbers, because we get a lot of applications. I think, do we have a reply here? Yeah, so as Milica put in here as an example, in the last round, we had 176 applications with team members based all around the world, based in 73 countries. That was for both of the schemes. I forget what the breakdown was for freelancer support scheme and for investigation support scheme. I can tell you more applications go to the investigation support scheme. So if you are freelancers or have predominantly freelancers in your team, and you're weighing up which scheme you might want to go to the freelancer support scheme because the competition may be slightly less. But there are other reasons why you might not. So I hope that's helpful. You basically, if you look at the data, I mean, I crunched the numbers the other day. It's let me see if I can pull this up. I mean, just to give you an idea of the competition, over the course of the whole program since it began, the ratio of people applying for money, the demand for money, and the supply of money, the amount of money we actually have to give out, is about 8 to 1. So in other words, for every 8 applications, 1 is successful, is the kind of ratio. Over the course of the program, by the end of this edition, there will have been something like 1,500, more than 1,500 teams will have applied to IJ4EU. And of those, and together they're seeking 43 million euros in funding. So there's a lot of demand. And over that period, we will only have been able to fund 230 teams at almost 6 million euros. So that gives you an idea of the scale. It's about an 8 to 1 thing. It sounds depressing. It sounds like you don't have that great a chance, but actually, it's definitely worth applying, because if you write as strong an application as you can, if you make it as concrete as you can, if it's a good story, as in it's something newsworthy, the chances really go up. So obviously, if for every 8 applications, not every 8 is fundable, some will be better than others. So if you just make yours as strong as you can, the chances are actually much better than it sounds. I hope that helps to not put you off too much by the sheer terror of the numbers. How can I be linked with other freelancers and teams to work on a project, says Danai. Well, I think that matchmaking service is the thing to go for. So again, there's that email, matchmaking@journalismarena.eu. I think that would be the best way to do that. Linda asks if we can say more about the criteria for selection. Is there a preference regarding sectors and topics, climate change, corruption, health, so on? Does the size of the team or the countries of the participating matter for the selection criteria? Great question. There is no preference for any topic or anything at all. Other funding schemes do have, say, focus on climate change or focus on environmental journalism or gender issues or whatever it might be. IJ4EU is completely agnostic on the topic front. It's also completely agnostic on the format. So all those media types that I mentioned before, from podcasts to traditional TV to documentary to newsprint, all completely eligible, equally so. So when the juries select the projects, they are not going to be saying, okay, we want lots of climate stories this time or lots of stories about Ukraine or whatever. Not at all. They're going to judge every single story based on its own merits. And the selection criteria are published on the site. If you go to the grants section, into each grant section, you can scroll down, you'll see the selection criteria. It tends to be things like cross-border relevance, newsworthiness, feasibility. There's a number of things, but they all have to do with the idea itself. It's not that any topic or format or anything wins the day. So I hope that's helpful. Size of the team doesn't matter. Basically, all the jury cares about, is this a good idea? Does the story deserve to be out there? And can this team pull it off? If the answer is yes, then you're going to get funded, chances are. So I hope that's helpful. I saw a gender balance criteria to the composition of the journalist team. To be clear, does that mean that an all-female team wouldn't be eligible? No, that's not the case at all. There is not we do not require teams to be balanced in terms of gender, for better or for worse. Like an all-female team, you might say that's in a male-dominated field. An all-female team would actually be seen more favorably than, say, an all-male team. Actually, the jury does not take gender into account, except to say, all other things being equal, if they had a very difficult decision where, let's say, two completely equal propositions, then, and it's impossible to decide, then they might say, okay, well, look, this team has all men, and this team has, 3 women and 2 men. That's a better gender balance. Let's give it to them. That might be, at the end of the day, a tiny factor, but it's not that important, okay? And certainly an all-female team is more than eligible, okay?
If I may just add to that, I would, that's why I would more phrase it like a recommendation, not a criteria, because as Tim emphasized, it is not a selection criteria, and all female teams, please, especially if you're applying to the freelancer support scheme, you're more than welcome. And we do have a question in our application form asking applicants to think about the topics of diversity and equity when it comes to the implementation of their projects, because it matters to us and we want to make applicants' team think about it. But it is not a selection criteria. And yes, the jury will judge the merits of your proposal based on the hard criteria that Tim just mentioned and that are published on the website.
That's right. And just to, I can read you what the selection criteria is. So it's cross-border relevance, it's relevance of the topic to the European and local public, it's newsworthiness and added value, it's the strength of the research and publication plan, it's the expected impact and/or the reach of the project, it's the feasibility of the project within the project timeline and the budget. So if the project's going to take 10 years and 20 million spiraling, they're not going to fund it. It's the applicant's experience and their journalistic credentials, but that doesn't mean you can't be a newcomer to this field. They just want to, think, can you pull this off? But don't think you have to have 20 years experience in investigative journalism to apply. That's not the case. They'll also look for adequate risk assessment. A factor might be the urgency of the financial need or other assistance. So for example, if you're from a very well-heeled, let's give an example. If you're from an international news agency, you're probably going to have a less chance of getting it than if you're a group of freelancers who are operating on a shoestring, that kind of thing. So the financial need may come into play. And then the jury is also instructed to think about geographical balance, thematic balance. This is all things being equal. They might say, well, okay, we've got 3 stories here on this, maybe we should consider this one so there's more of a thematic balance or more of a geographical balance, and then balance among types of investigative teams. And they want to make, again, all things being equal, has attention been paid to underreported topics as well as investigative topics affecting local communities? So those are some of the things they might think about if they're deadlocked. But first and foremost, it's the quality of the application that they care about. So I hope that's clear and helpful. Okay. Is it possible to have contact or consultation before you send it to make it more successful? Yes, you're welcome to draft your application and then drop us a note and say, look, before I hit the submit button, would you mind just giving a bit of feedback? We can't guarantee that we're going to be that helpful, but we can point out some obvious things or say maybe you could beef up that part, or you really could do with a letter of intent or something like that. So feel free. I mean, we don't have the capacity to do this for every single application. We just can't do it. So maybe if you could be specific in your inquiry, like you're not so sure something about the publication plan, can you give me some feedback on that? That would be helpful. Abdullah asks, can an African story with a strong European angle fly? In that case, can an African journalist partner with eligible European journalists? Can an African journalist partner with eligible European journalists? So the answer is yes. An African story with usually it's the other way. It's a European story with an African focus, but could an African focus with a European angle? Yes, indeed. That's fine. No problem at all. But a couple of things to say about that. You will need to have your team members in those eligible countries, and the lead team member, the lead partner, or the lead, what we call the lead applicant, needs to be in one of those eligible countries, even if the actual editorial lead is being driven from the African partner. I hope that, have I understood the question correctly? I hope so, and I hope that's clear. Is there a deadline for publication of the stories? Yes, it's, as Milica writes here, it's 6 months from the time of getting the funding. Now, we know it's often outside of your control, and we know that there can be delays. And in fact, oftentimes there are delays and stories are not published within that window. We have, mechanisms to deal with that. We do ask you to please do everything in your power to meet the deadlines. It's not because we're some sort of, bureaucrats trying to make your life difficult and make you play by these arbitrary rules. It's because we need to report back. This is taxpayer money, after all. We need to report back to the funders that, in fact, this was money that was well spent. And if none of the stories are published on time, we have nothing to show for it. And then, well, chances of getting this funding again goes down. So that's why it is important that we can't have everything delayed indefinitely. We do understand that, of course, delays happen. But we do ask you to please do as much as you can to at least publish something within the 6 months. Even then, if you continue to do other, it really helps us with our own sort of, we want to continue this program for many years if we possibly can, and increase it, have more money available. So it's really important that there actually are results to show for it. Okay, since publication must be done within 6 months, when we write the investigation timeline, can we write month 1, month 2? Yes, absolutely, that's fine. Don't need exact dates. You can just put month 1, 2, 1, 3, and so on. Can the final product be in video format? As Milica says, categorically, yes, sure. Any format at all. Okay, and then we've got a few notes here. In the investigation support scheme, do we need the letter of intent, even if we already have our own news websites to publish the investigation? That's a good question from Marco. And the answer is no. If you essentially represent your own news organization, then we take it that you intend to publish if you can pull the story off. So no, you don't. That's really more important for freelancers, for other configurations of collaborations where you have third-party media partners who you're hoping to publish the story with. But if you're the publisher, then you're in charge. So that's fine. Okay, I think that's it for the questions there. Are there any other questions or anything else that we've missed? I hope this has been useful in clarifying things. Zlatina, anything spring to mind that we haven't mentioned that we should have, or Denise, Milica?
Not really. Again, my plea for please send us questions, and yes, do ask for these consultations, and especially when it came to the feedback on previous applications. Yes, unfortunately, it's physically not possible for us to always give feedback to unsuccessful applications. But yes, if you reach out to us, we do our best to be useful and to provide you with some comments. One more addition on our part when it comes to the freelancer support scheme: if you send us your application for review, we will probably not do that. Also because it might put the rest of the applicants into a more disadvantaged position. But if you do come to us with specific questions on certain parts of the applications, whether by email, whether in a short call, we're always there and ready to help. The fact that we will give you feedback does not guarantee success for your application. But again, we are always willing to help you meet the criteria as well as possible. Yeah,
that's a really good point, Zlatina, and you've actually articulated that much better than me previously. It's not, when it comes to giving feedback, we can't be sort of almost taking ownership of the thing and partnering with you to make it better, because that would be an uncomfortable sort of stepping across that firewall line that I mentioned before. It would almost be, it could be seen as giving an unfair advantage, but we can be very specific in the in just the advice we give if you have specific questions. Our philosophy is that we want everyone to submit the strongest possible application so that they're all equally competing from the point of view of strength. And anything we can do to help you with that, we will. But what we can't be doing is sort of, oh, I'd rewrite it like this, and you'd be much stronger if you did that. There are limits to what we can do because it simply it contravenes the whole editorial independence principle, which is so sacred to us.
I see another question on possible advice in budgeting salary for the applicants, hourly, full-time, part-time. From my perspective, for the freelancer support scheme, it really doesn't matter. Whatever really suits your proposal, whether it makes sense to budget in days or hours or months as a percentage of time, it doesn't matter. What matters is for the budget to be realistic. That's why we also, I believe, in both applications, for both grants, we have a section for budget justifications where you can also explain the reasoning behind the structure of your budget. And yeah, as general as it may sound, do not blow up your budgets, because the jury is really very strict about that. And yeah, they want to support budgets that are as efficient as possible. But also for freelancers, do not under budget. Because we have seen in the past that some people think that if they apply for a smaller amount, that increases their chance of being awarded, which is not the case. But if their story is good enough and they do get awarded, they will actually struggle in the implementation phase. So that's my only advice. I'm not sure how specific and helpful it is, but be realistic. And yeah, whatever structure of the budget, given the template, works for you, feel free to apply it.
Absolutely. I would second that. Don't be afraid to do a large budget if it's justified. The philosophy should be, what do we need? How much money do we need to actually make this the best investigation we can, and work from there? Obviously, you don't want to just have an arbitrary budget to get 50,000. You need to justify every penny of that. And yeah, don't make it too small either, because the jury will be looking at feasibility. And they'll say, well, this is pie in the sky. You're not going to be able to do this huge investigation with this 12,000 euros or whatever it might be. So be realistic. There's a question from Marco about co-funding. So if we ask for 50,000, say from IJ4EU, and co-financing from our side, can it be for a share in excess of this 50,000 euros, or must it be within the 50K? We don't mind. You can ask for any amount up to 50,000 from IJ4EU, and your co-funding or your co-contribution or whatever it is can be any amount, big or small. So there is no rule in that area. Does it make sense to apply to both grants with the same projects? Well, actually, no, it doesn't. You're not really allowed to do that. We do ask you to choose and apply to one or the other. Sometimes we might actually get back to you and say, thank you for your application to the freelancer support scheme, say. Actually, we think it would be better in the other scheme. Can we transfer it across? But we would always do that in consultation with you. And it goes the other way as well, of course.
And if I may add, so yeah, you will not be disqualified for picking the wrong scheme, to put it that way, but with the same project, you should apply to one of the grants. Having said that, with different project ideas, you can apply to both grants. With different project ideas, you can also apply to the same grant. So if you have 3 different project ideas for the investigation or the freelancer support scheme, that's fine. The limitation is only for the same project, so to say.
Right. Okay, well, we've done well within the hour, 5 minutes to go. I guess last chance for any more questions. If not, then we'll let you get on with it. These have been great questions. Thank you so much for asking them. I think it's helpful for everybody to hear them, and I hope that people watching this later will benefit. So sorry for the repetition if you're sitting through, if I'm explaining things that have been clearly answered on the text there, but I hope it's going to be helpful. Well, I guess all that remains then is for us to wish you the very best of luck.